There were seasons in my life when I felt like I failed my father, not once, but multiple times. I got pregnant at such a young age. And then years later, life hit us again. We lost almost everything. I had failed again. Failed my family, failed my father, failed the people I love. I got hospitalized. I was sick for 3 straight months. My body finally said what I refused to. Stop. God taught me that failure may be part of my story, but it does not get to become my identity. That matters so much. Welcome to Built with Grace, the podcast for faith-driven entrepreneurs who want to build a business, pursue their passion, and stay aligned with what matters most. I'm Alani Jen Gimenales, founder of Scale Up VA, and here we talk about faith, family, business, purpose, and building without burnout. If you are ready to grow without losing yourself, you are in the right place. There is a kind of pain that hits differently when you feel like you did not just struggle. You disappointed the people you love. And if I'm being honest, that is a pain I know very well. Welcome back to Built with Grace. I'm Alani Jean Gimenales, and today I want to talk about something deeply personal. I want to talk about what happens when failure does not just affect you, but feels like it reaches the people closest to you. The people who believed in you, the people who hoped for more for you, the people whose eyes you never wanted to see disappointment in. Because sometimes that kind of pain becomes the silent reason we push too hard. Sometimes it becomes the wound behind our hustle. Sometimes it becomes the shame we try to outrun by overworking, overperforming, and overproving. And I know that because I have lived it. There were seasons in my life when I felt like I failed my father. Not once, but multiple times. The first was when I got pregnant at such a young age. I knew what that meant. I knew how hard life already was. I knew we were not ready. And I knew that as a daughter, that moment carried more than my own emotions. It carried the weight of his hopes too. And if some things were never said directly, I felt them. The disappointment, the concern, the heartbreak of knowing your child is entering a life she is not prepared for yet. And that stayed with me. Because when you love your parents, their pain affects you. Their silence affects you. Their disappointment can echo inside you for years if you do not let God heal it. And then years later, life hit us again. During the pandemic, we lost almost everything. At that point, I thought we were going to be okay. We had already been doing online selling. We had been lending money too. So when the school I was teaching at closed down after I gave birth to my youngest, I told myself, maybe we would manage. And for a little while, it looked like we would. But then, sales slowed down. People stopped paying their loans. The income dried up. And later, we realized we were already drowning in debt. I cannot fully explain what it feels like to watch your life unravel while trying to stay calm for everyone else. To keep moving, to keep solving, to keep showing up. And underneath all of that, I carried something I didn't want to admit. I felt like I had failed again. Failed my family, failed my father, failed the people I loved. And that feeling became heavier than I realized. I didn't want to admit it then, but I can admit it now. Part of the reason I pushed myself so hard was because I was trying to make up for the past. I was trying to prove something. Prove that I was not a failure. Prove that I could still make something of my life. Prove that the disappointments were not the final story. Prove that I could recover what was lost. Prove that I was still worthy. So I kept working. I kept pushing. I kept ignoring my limits. What looked like discipline on the outside was often pain on the inside. What looked like drive was sometimes shame. What looked like ambition was sometimes fear. What looked like strength was sometimes self-punishment. And that is a dangerous place to build from, because when your work becomes a way to redeem yourself, you will keep going long after wisdom says stop. And that is exactly what happened to me. My body finally said what I refused to: stop. I got hospitalized. I was sick for 3 straight months. 3 months. 3 months of weakness. 3 months of slowing down whether I wanted to or not. 3 months of being forced to sit with what I had been running from. And in that stillness, God started exposing things in me that productivity had been hiding. He showed me that I was carrying shame. He showed me that I was still trying to earn back worth that had never been mine to earn. He showed me that I was trying to redeem myself through effort instead of letting Jesus be enough. That season was humbling because I realized something painful but freeing. You cannot heal shame by overworking. You cannot outrun guilt by overperforming. And you cannot build a healthy life from a place of self-punishment. God taught me that failure may be part of my story, but it does not get to become my identity. That matters so much. Because when you have disappointed people you love, it is easy to start wearing failure like a name tag. You stop saying, I failed, and you start believing, I am a failure. That is what shame does. It takes an event and tries to turn it to your identity. And that is not how God speaks. God convicts, but He does not crush. He corrects, but He does not condemn His children into hopelessness. He restores. And for me, part of restoration was learning this. Jesus already carried the weight of my shame. He already paid for the places where I fell short. He already knew every wrong turn, every regret, every disappointing chapter, and He still chose me. That changes everything. Because if Jesus already carried what I keep trying to punish myself more, then my healing begins when I stop trying to do His job. Maybe you're listening right now and you know exactly what I mean. Maybe you feel like you failed your parents. Maybe you feel like you failed your spouse. Maybe you feel like you failed your children. Maybe you made choices you wish you could undo. Maybe life collapsed in ways you never expected, and you are carrying the silent weight of that. And maybe like me, part of your exhaustion is not just work. It is shame. It is the inner pressure to prove that you are still enough, to prove that you can recover, to prove that you are not the worst thing that happened in your life. I want to speak gently but clearly to that place in you. Yes, take responsibility. Yes, grow. And yes, learn from what happened. But do not spend your whole life punishing yourself for what God is already trying to redeem. Some of us are not just tired from building. Some of us are tired from carrying guilt that Jesus already paid for. And until you face that, rest will feel unsafe. Slowing down will feel lazy, and grace will feel too good to be true. But remember, it is true. Grace does not pretend the pain did not happen. Grace does not excuse everything away. Grace does not erase consequences. Grace does something better. It meets you in the ashes and says, this is not where your story ends. It reminds you that God can still rebuild, that He can still restore trust that He can still heal relationships, that He can still use the broken parts of your life for His glory. That is the beauty of redemption. Redemption does not mean the past never happened. It means the past no longer gets the final word. And for me, that has been a process, a holy process, a painful process, and a freeing process. Learning to let God restore me instead of trying to redeem myself. This lesson has changed the way I build now, because I no longer want to build from fear. I no longer want to build from shame. I no longer want to build from the need to prove something to everybody. I want to build from wholeness, from obedience, from stewardship, from peace. That does not mean I never feel pressure. It does not mean the old wounds never try to speak. But now I recognize them faster. Now I can ask better questions. Am I working for purpose? Or am I reacting from pain? Am I building from alignment? Or am I trying to outrun shame? Am I moving in faith? Or am I trying to prove my worth again? Those questions matter, because the reason behind your hustle will shape the condition of your soul. The verse I want to anchor in this episode is Romans chapter 8, verse 1. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. No condemnation, not less condemnation, not delayed condemnation. No condemnation. That does not mean there is no conviction. It means that in Christ, shame does not get to own you. And maybe you need that reminder today. Maybe you need to remember that your failures are real, but they are not final. That your regrets are not too big for God. That the people you disappointed are not the ones who define your future. God does, and He is still writing. So if you are in a season where you feel like you failed the people you love, hear me clearly. Do not run from accountability, but also do not live in self-condemnation. Do not pretend it did not hurt, but also do not believe that hurt is all your life will ever be. Let God meet you there. Let Him restore you there. Let Him heal the place in you that thinks you have to suffer forever to make up for the past. Because failure may be part of your story, but it does not get to be your name. Thank you for being here with me on this episode of Built with Grace. If this episode spoke to a place in your heart that has been heavy for a long time, I pray it reminded you that grace is still available, even here. And if you know someone who has been silently carrying shame while trying to stay strong, send this to them. Until next time, remember this: you do not have to redeem yourself. Jesus already did that, and God can still build something beautiful from the parts of your life you thought disqualified you.